Hi everyone! Welcome to my first book review. It's going to be kind of like a mini book review, partly because the book in question isn't really that long in general. It's more of a novella. It's about 156 pages if I remember. The book in question is Carmilla by Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu. To start, I wanted to read this book particularly because, well, to be totally transparent, once I was perusing the shelves in Barnes & Noble a few months back, this cover caught my eye. I mean, look at it. It is very beautiful. This caught my eye, and, you know, at the bottom where it features that it was, as it says, the cult classic that inspired Dracula, piqued my interest. Now, hard to tell in the background shot, but I'm currently about 20 pages through in Dracula, so started the inspiration and now on to the classic that brought vampire stories into our lives. But as far as Carmilla goes, I have to say I really, really enjoyed this little novella. Didn't think that I wouldn't. There was nothing really particularly that had me doubting the quality of the story or any of the storytelling, anything along those lines. I will say, as far as the narration style, or maybe it's just reflective of the time. The book was published in 1872, and I do believe that this edition is not too heavily edited from what the original version must have read like. This is the only edition of the book that I have read. I did see that there were other editions out there. There is one that includes a lot of footnotes throughout the book. This one doesn't. That edition of the book I haven't read. I did hear some mixed reviews about the general usefulness of the footnotes in that edition. This edition I really enjoyed. Like I said, the narration style, it's very true to the time. The language that's used, again, it's very indicative of late 1800s, which I particularly enjoyed a lot. I really do I like the way that was preserved. Some people may not have as easy of a time reading this because of that. People who may be more, I want to say, casual readers, people who enjoy books that are written with a type of language, written with a style of narration that is a lot more modern, is a lot more digestible for them, easier to get through. So if you are someone who falls under that category, or you are thinking of getting this as a gift for a reader who you know may have more difficulty getting through a story that has a narration style that's of an older time, then that may not be the first choice, I should say, for a reader who is a bit more of that reading style. If they tend to, I guess, just have more of an appetite for writing that is of a more modern style, then this may not appeal to them as much. But regardless, the story itself is wonderful. If you are someone who really enjoys Gothic novels, this is something I would recommend. Anyone who's into a good vampire story, definitely recommend this. And most especially if you are looking for a, I guess, less predictable type of vampire story. Because again, as a lot of you may be aware if you've looked into the general summary of the story, Carmilla is a story involving a female vampire that is preying upon and is very enamored with the main character, who is also a girl. So this is what you could call a queer vampire story. I really, really enjoyed it. I really liked, one of the things that I really liked the most about the way that the plot progressed through the narration of Laura, the main character, who is, I believe she's 18 or 19. I don't think they specifically noted her exact age in the book. I think it was just upon some research I was doing that I found out that. What I really liked was, through Laura's narration, the development of her feelings toward Carmilla as a companion and as a person. She details multiple times over her seemingly helpless magnetism toward Carmilla, and she also makes it aware, she's self-aware that there is that helpless magnetism toward her. She's aware of how strong the feelings are and how strong the pull is to her, both in a way that is inexplicable and also still, I guess, explainable, maybe for lack of a better word, in her own mind. Yet at the same time, she also explains that there is a simultaneous repulsion toward Carmilla, and she can't exactly pinpoint why. So in that same vein, she just accepts her feelings, of her intense feelings toward Carmilla, and sort of just proceeds with that, and seems to put her repulsions on the back burner, since she can't really quite pinpoint those. It's almost like because she's young, she's a young adult, teenage girl, who is thinking to herself, well, how could I possibly have any negative feelings toward this companion of mine who is so hopelessly devoted to me in every way, who has this endless amount of adoration for me, who just wants to spend every minute of every day together. Side note on that, she does acknowledge that, despite the fact that Carmilla is gone for hours at a time. Early in the day, she never comes down as it's described in the book, she never comes down from her bed quarters until well into the afternoon time. She never dines with the family. She never, so she, despite saying that she spends every minute and every hour of the day with her, Carmilla does with Laura, at the same time, Carmilla has multiple daily disappearances, and Laura just sort of doesn't let herself question it for too long at a time, probably feeling foolish to question it in any type of way, because, oh, well, it's Carmilla. She's, for all of the ways that she is so mysterious and her mannerisms unexplainable, all of it is just fine with me because of the way that she carries herself as a person, and how she treats me and talks to me, and talks about always wanting to be together and having a life together. It's a very, I guess it is very reflective of sometimes the grand infatuations that we can have when we are of that age, and I guess of that maturity. She doesn't seem to be very well learned in the world, I guess. I don't even know if that's really an exaggerated statement, just because of how sheltered she has been over the course of her life, where she has lived, and how the lack of, just how there is a lack of her traveling very far outside of her own land and really experiencing many other people and other types of cultures and that sort of thing. So those are, multiple things that I really enjoyed about the way that the story progressed and the way that those two characters interacted with each other. Something that I didn't particularly like about the story was, I guess, just that at times it did really feel like it was being dragged along, the story itself. And that's not to say that the pace of the narration was too slow or not captivating enough, just rather that it felt like at times that we were given excess detail for certain moments when it could have moved along naturally without the level of focus and without the level of focus that it was given at certain times. Now, obviously, I'm sure it was for a reason during these different points. You know, we have to consider the time that it was written and the time that it was published, and the general pace that audiences at that time were very used to. But I suppose I have to consider I'm someone who lives in 2024. My natural pacing for reading stories is much different than that was back then. That was just one thing. I don't think there's anything besides that was anything I disliked about the book or about the storytelling. I enjoyed all of the characters. I think that there wasn't any lacking in any character developments of any kind. Another thing that I suppose I both enjoyed and also wished at the same time was maybe a little different was, I guess, the length. I have no qualms with novellas, especially of this length. Like I said, this one I believe was about 154, 156 pages, if I'm remembering correctly, which is wonderful. However, because I enjoyed the story so much, and by the time that I was nearing those last 50 or so pages, I was well aware that I wanted there to be even more of the story. I wanted there to be more content, more for me to just continue and enjoy. I'm sure so many of you can relate if you are a big reader, that once you really do get hooked on a story, you really don't want it to end. And sometimes, at times, it can make you even then take in the story slower on purpose so that you can savor it for longer. That absolutely was me by, like I said, the last 50 or so pages of the book. I became well aware that I just wanted it to last for longer. So, but I guess that's not even really a knock on it. That actually is just another support for why I really enjoyed this. If you are looking for a book that presents a lot of scary rather than unease or more of a creepy type of vibe, if you are looking for legitimate scares, you want to have the covers pulled up, sitting in bed with the book, this probably is not what you're looking for. This does provide a lot more of the, like I said, more of a creepy vibe, more of like an unease, kind of an unsettling factor, and it builds through the book. Now, I personally really enjoy horror books and gothic novels and the related genres that are of that style, because I feel personally that when it comes to books, it is difficult to depict that kind of big scares and, hard-hitting, I guess, just horror when it comes to books. It can be pretty difficult, I guess, compared to movies and whatnot. But unique to books, the depiction of the unease and the gradual creepiness developing in a story, it is just, it is done like no other medium. So that's just something that I prefer. But again, if you are looking for much more of you want to get really scared, you want that fright in you, then this is probably not going to deliver in that department. So just be aware. Something to touch on, since I did just start reading Dracula as of this week. I'm about 30 or so pages in, so I'm hardly into the first parts of the book. Something to be aware of is that if you are like me and you've decided to read Carmilla first and then move on to Bram Stoker's Dracula, I will say that it's been an enjoyable experience thus far, having read Carmilla first and moving on then to the classic that it inspired, in the way of seeing, even again, in just the first 30 or so pages, seeing the influence directly, seeing the ways that Bram Stoker directly takes from an inspiration from Sheridan Le Fanu, in the way that he depicts his vampire character, the behaviors, even just the way that they speak. It's been really enjoyable thus far in the very beginning pages, just to see those comparisons and see the ways that it was directly influenced. I wouldn't say it's necessary to read Carmilla first and then move on to Dracula. You can read them independent of each other, with no problem. I just personally thought it would be a fun idea, a fun experience to read what inspired Dracula first, as I always have wanted to read Dracula, but I never really got around to buying it until fairly recently, and then that just inspired me to keep going and finish Carmilla, as I wanted to see the parallels. Before I conclude, one other point that I wanted to go into, just specific to the synopsis included. At the end of the synopsis, it does read, "Predating Dracula by 26 years, Carmilla is the original vampire story steeped in sexual tension and gothic romance." On that, I do have to say that if you read that synopsis and you take that concluding point, and have a strong expectation for that to be the case, that it is, quote, steeped in sexual tension and gothic romance, I have to specify that what the reader may be looking for in those terms may not be as well delivered as one would expect, especially during these days. I only say that because of the ever-growing trend of romance novels. Nothing wrong with romance novels. I do love a good romance story myself. I am quite a sucker for it. I think particularly the appetite that a lot of us readers, especially as women in this day and age, tend to have with what is depicted in the books that we read in terms of sexual tension. There is not as much of that as you may expect here in comparison to other popular novels as of late. We are pretty spoiled, I would say, in terms of what authors deliver for us as far as the fan service, all of that. We are given a lot more of that than there used to be depicted in traditionally written books, novels, that sort of thing. So I would just caution that if you are someone who has read that part of the synopsis and you get this idea in your head that it's going to be this very steamy, very, I guess, sexualized dynamic between Carmilla and Laura, you may find that your expectations are a little bit high. The reason for this is, again, consider the time that it was written and published, consider the norms of those times. Try to keep in mind that while it is true, while it is the case that there are undertones of sexual tension in this novella, between Laura and Carmilla. That is still present, that's still there. It is implied in such a way, just that, again, if you do have some kind of like grand expectation, I would lower it a little bit, just a little. Just consider the factors in mind. I guess just consider the audience of the time, consider even the author, and what was acceptable. With all of that being said, I highly recommend this book, just in general, but also considering that it is October, we're in spooky month, we're coming upon Halloween. With all things spooky, I very much recommend Carmilla to anyone, again, that enjoys the horror genre, gothic novels, novellas, all of that sort, especially if you enjoy vampire stories and you are looking for something new, maybe something you haven't heard before, and especially if you are into classics. Highly, highly recommend Carmilla. Out of 5 stars, I would give it a 4.5. Tentatively, I'm willing to potentially revise my review at a later date, but as of right now, it is definitely a 4.5 out of 5. And if you do pick up Carmilla as a result of this review, I really hope you enjoy it, and happy reading. So thanks for coming to my very first book review. I enjoyed spending time with all of you talking about books, and tune in next time. Hope you have a great day.